All right, I'm back and answering more of your Team Delusional questions. Let's just hop right in if I can find them. There we go. Okay. What exactly is it about Zabel, I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, the dark ship hates so much? I haven't been paying a ton of attention to that corner of the fandom sandbox, but a box of anger from there went by my dash earlier. Shouldn't they just be happy Carol was shown on the finale? Yeah, so for those who don't know, Zabel is the showrunner of the Daryl Dixon spinoff. If you watched my video about the panel, he was the bald guy in the panel, and I think he's doing a great job. There's not any logical reason why they don't like him. Don't expect me to make it make sense for you, because it's just them hating on him. But I can tell you that the reason they don't like him is because he's not making Carol the top billing of the show and the main character. He's not bowing down to kiss her feet. He's not making them top priority in what they want. Therefore, they hate him. It's really as simple as that. They're not getting what they want. I agree that they should be happy that Carol is coming back onto the show, because if I can tell you right now, if the tables were turned and for some reason Norman had to back out of the spinoff because he had some other commitment, and so the first season was just about Carol, obviously I wouldn't have been nearly as excited about it, but I still would have watched it. I like Carol as a character, and I would know that they're going somewhere with it, and that when Norman came back into it, that then they would probably be heading out to look for Beth. So I would be still okay watching it, even if he wasn't in it, and then I would be very excited for him to come into it because, you know, he's our favorite character, and of course we're always excited to see him come back onto our screen. So you would think that they would feel the same way. But you're right, that's what you're saying. They don't. They're not happy about it at all. It kind of goes back to what I said last week about how you would think they would be really happy that it's called the Book of Carol because it sounds like it's going to be all about Carol. Yeah, they're not happy. They feel like there's something underhanded going on there, and I mean, honestly, I don't want to say they're right. It's obviously not something underhanded, but they're actually feeling the correct vibe. What I mean is they're definitely getting the feeling that it's not going to be all about Carol, that something else is going on, that she's just part of a bigger story. And so that much is correct, and they are picking up on that vibe, and it's pissing them off because that's not what they want. So that's why. That's the only reason they hate Zabel. You know, they've hated on Angela King a lot because Angela King is the one who wrote Still. So she has always been a huge part, alongside Gimple, of Beth and Daryl's relationship in that whole arc. So they really don't like Angela either, and they've really hated on her a lot, unfortunately. So yeah, just try to ignore them. I mean, they're never going to be happy because they're never going to get what they want. It's just not where they're going in the show. They have been told that over and over and over in a million different ways, and they just refuse to accept it. So they're going to continue to be angry, and they're going to continue to hate, and I would just encourage you to ignore them. I mean, the anger, you know, flies past my dash too, and I have people who go into the tags and take pictures, and I'm always kind of interested in what they're saying. Like, I'll read through it, and mostly I just kind of chuckle and shake my head. But yeah, don't expect that to change anytime soon. But thank you for that. Next one. I doubt Beth is coming back in season 2 either. The Book of Carol is going to need lots of narrative space, maybe season 3. I almost think the smartest thing would be to bring her back in another show's spinoff. I'm worried about space and how much room they'll need to bring back a character like Beth. But I so badly want her to come back. I haven't given up yet. Well, I'm glad you haven't given up. I might almost see your point, except that, I mean, we saw that coda in episode 6, and that's a big deal to me. And I think that it shows that that's the next thing we're going to see. And I don't mean like the first 5 minutes of 201 we're going to see her, like the next scene. I just mean the next story arc. That's what it's going to be about. So I do think we'll see her in season 2, but of course we don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. And if they were to show her first, here's the other thing. If they do show her first in one of the spinoffs, then I think it's a foregone conclusion that we'll see her in season 2, because they will have already introduced her. And then when season 2 comes back, they will be all ready to start telling her story. But I also think it could be very tangled up with Carol's, because Carol was with her at Grady. So her and Beth's story were always very intertwined. So I think, I don't know, I still think that we'll see her in season 2. But again, we'll have to wait and see. So I feel you, and I'm glad you haven't given up yet. Not sure if you answered this already, but did Norman and Emily really dated back then? Can you confirm or deny this? I can't confirm or deny it. We don't know for sure. I don't think they did. I've said this many times. A lot of people think they did. In fact, I don't think they did, and that's actually in the minority, in my opinion. Most people think they did, at least a little bit. For me, I just never really saw a whole lot of evidence of it. The biggest thing that people cite for the reason they think they were dating is there was a time after season 4 when they were on the red carpet together, and they were just kind of hanging all over each other and being really flirty. And then not too long after Coda, there was a thing where Emily was at an event, you know, like a con or something, and Norman showed up and she went and hugged him, and it was like a thing where she jumped up and wrapped her legs around him and everything. And yeah, I get that that looks very romantic, but it's my opinion that they were doing what the fans wanted them to do and really playing into promoting the show and promoting Beth and Daryl as a couple. For the most part, the actors do tend to keep their lives fairly private. I mean, of course, we know who they're married to and that sort of thing, and we get plenty of pictures of Norman and his daughter now and everything, but even so, I don't think that they would be flaunting their relationship on the red carpet at a Walking Dead event. I mean, it just doesn't seem to me like something they would do. So when people point to that specifically and say, this is how I know they were dating, I just personally think that that's incorrect. But I also don't know for sure. You know, it could be that they did sometime before that, and we just don't know it. So we can't confirm or deny either way, but it is my personal opinion that they didn't, and it's most other people's opinion that they did. So you'll just have to decide what you believe. Okay, next one. I feel like enough time has passed that Emily wouldn't be opposed to saying how dumb Beth's death was if she really is truly dead, but she just doesn't want to ruffle feathers or be mean. I know she said in articles after Coda that stabbing Dawn was a mistake, and Gimple never really gave a reason to kill her off, and she found out from the scripts. But part of me wonders if they made her sign an NDA a long time ago so she couldn't talk about scrapped stuff or script changes, like how Laurie Holden talks so much crap about Glenn Mazzara back in the day, because it's not a good look for the network. So I agree with parts of this, but not other parts. So I have absolutely no doubt that she has signed a dictionary-sized NDA. In fact, we actually know that about the actors, that they do. A good example of this was when Lenny James first showed up again in season 5. So we saw him at the end of No Sanctuary, which was 501, right? And kind of a Coda moment where he, you know, had the mask on and took it off and was on the train tracks. He talked about how he had to sign this massive NDA, and they didn't want him staying in a hotel because they were sure he would be recognized. So they were able to get a local resident who had like an extra room in their basement that they rented out sometimes to let him stay there. And this couple, who was an older couple, I think, had to sign a massive NDA, and they didn't even know who they were signing it for. They just knew that it was some actor that was working on the show, and they couldn't talk about him. And then when he showed up, they did recognize him and went, "Oh, it's you." So we know that they signed those. We know they're not allowed to talk about things. We know they like couldn't tell us in season 6 who Negan's victim was. I mean, that's just always the way that it is. And I would say that the fact that she doesn't talk about it shows that she still works for AMC and she still has a contract with them. Of course, she's not, you know, you're right. She doesn't want to ruffle feathers. She doesn't want to be mean. Emily is not a mean, spiteful person. And I think she truly does respect the writers on the show and everyone she works with. So even if she wasn't happy about having to leave the show, I still don't think, honestly, that she would feel so angry that she would start bad-mouthing them. That's just not who she is. As to what you said about Gimple and everything, that's kind of true. They didn't give a really good reason for killing her off. She did start to sort of parrot some of the things that Gimple said. So we heard her say several times that Beth had gained confidence while she was at Grady, and then she had this moment of overconfidence when she stabbed Dawn. And that was something Gimple started saying, and then Emily picked it up and started saying it. And it's not that that's wrong or bad, but it just goes to show that she's saying what the writers are telling her to say, and she's saying what Gimple is telling her to say. Because I do believe that if she, you know, if Beth was really dead and off the show, that they would have done a deep dive into what was going on with her and what actually happened and how she was feeling. And it's like they just sort of skipped over all of that and were like, oh yeah, it's very sad. Okay, let's move on. And so I think that's part of excuse me, part of the weirdness around her death. Of course, there's all the weirdness at Grady and everything that actually happened in the show, but what was going on outside of the show is also part of the weirdness. So, like I said, I don't think it's about them keeping her from bad-mouthing them necessarily, because I don't think she would do that anyway. I think it's more about she can't talk about it because it's not over yet, and yeah, they absolutely had her sign an NDA that she cannot talk about it. The other thing is that we have seen her since in several of ABC's smaller pilot shows that only last one season, only do a handful of episodes, and we know that ABC is a sister company to AMC. We've seen a lot of The Walking Dead actors go do these small shows, especially if they're not going to be on The Walking Dead for a season or two. They'll get work with ABC, and then they can come back. So Lauren Cohen is the perfect example. When she wasn't going to be on the show for a season or two, she went and did... okay, I'm blanking on the name of it, but she did one of these ABC series for one season, and that allowed her to keep working and, you know, keep her contract, and then she could just go back to The Walking Dead when they were ready for her. And they've done that with a lot of the actors. You know, mostly they're like the smaller actors, the side actors, but we've seen it. And so the fact that Emily keeps doing these small little side shows shows that they are keeping her in reserve and they are keeping her under contract so that they can bring her back when they're ready. Anyway, so I do think that there's a lot of legal stuff going on here and you're picking up on it, which is great. But I just don't think that there's anything really like negative or narcissistic or sinister about it. That's just my opinion. All right. So these kind of go together, and by the time that this video that I'm recording right now posts, I will have already posted the video about the missing 17 days. So I have a couple of questions about it here. Since most of TD's headcanon is that of post-Coda, Beth woke up in a car or wherever TF left her and somehow escaped the horde of 800 walkers. Do you think she went back to Grady for recovery from her head wound? And then can you please elaborate on how the locations from the unaired and missing footages post-Coda, such as cabin, the church, and many other, all connect to Beth and the missing 17 days. So again, if you haven't watched it, go watch my video on the missing 17 days. I go into a lot of detail about all of this, like exactly these questions. And the answer is yes, I think there's a very good chance she went back to Grady. We don't know for sure, but I think there's a very, very high chance of that. And we do have a lot of evidence for all of these things. And like I said, I'm not going to go into it here because I go into a lot of detail in that video about the church and the cabin and everything we think happened during the missing 17 days. So I will try to remember to link it up in the show notes. Sometimes I tell you guys I'm going to link something up and I forget, and I'm really sorry. But I will try to link it up. But if not, just go find it on my YouTube channel. It's called The Missing 17 Days video. It won't be too hard to find. Has Greg Nicotero or anybody from the powers that be ever stated why in 509 they misled the viewers Beth's funeral in the beginning of the episode when it's actually Tyrese's? If not, can you explain this? If Beth's really dead, there really shouldn't be any kind of misleading at all. I agree. So as far as I know, they've never really stated why they did that. I know that after 509, Nicotero was on The Talking Dead, and he that's where he said the thing about the missing 17 days. Like, he literally, guys, that's where it came from. We wouldn't have known that there were 17 days, but Chris asked him, how many days has it been since Coda? And he was like, 17 days. And it's like, okay, well, that's weirdly specific. You know, they obviously planned it in great detail. They know exactly what happened to that during that time period, and they know exactly how long it was. So that's really compelling. That why would they know that and not tell us what's going on, unless they're purposely trying to keep it a secret. As to why they did it, I think it's all part of the death fake out. And I also think, so like on the one hand, it is something that they're trying to mislead us with. They wanted us to think that that first funeral was Beth. And you guys, you have to understand that I haven't gotten it a lot lately, but years after that aired, people still think that that was Beth's funeral. There are still people in the fandom who don't watch it as closely as we do who still think that. Like, for years, I was getting people going, what are you talking about? She did get a funeral in the beginning of this episode, and I would have to just be really patient with them and say, no. Go watch the funeral at the beginning of 509 and then go watch the funeral at the end. It's the same funeral. It's just one of those things where they were showing us a funeral and we didn't know who, you know, I mean, people assumed it was Beth. And then as it turns out, it was like, surprise, actually, it's Tyrese's funeral. And of course, nobody knew, unless you'd read spoilers or whatever, that Tyrese was going to die. So part of it was the fake out, right? They are trying to misdirect. They are trying to fake us out. And it's like, okay, but if that was Tyrese's funeral, what happened with Beth. But most people don't ask that. You know, they just go, oh, that was Tyrese. That sucks. You know, we're sad to lose him. But they don't go, wait a minute. Well, then, so again, it's partly part of the fake out. But I also think that and you know, maybe I should do another deep dive into 509. It's one of my favorite episodes because there's so much symbolism in it. There's so much cool stuff in it. There's so much tragedy in it. And I just love that episode. But there are a lot of clues to the future of Beth's arc in that episode. A lot of them. And it took us so long to figure out what they all were because we didn't know where they were going with it, right? But as time went on and we learned more, we realized how many clues there are to Beth being alive and the fact that they're going to bring her back in that episode. So I think it's partly that too. They wanted to make us think that it was her burial at the beginning, specifically as a clue to the fact that she didn't get one. So they are trying to misdirect, but they're also hinting at things at the same time. So that's my take on it. As I said, I don't think anyone has ever confirmed it one way or the other. They wouldn't, because that would be too obvious. But the fact that they did that at all shows that there's a lot of misdirection going on. And you're right. Like, why would they be trying to mislead us if she's not coming back anyway? What would be the point of that? It's like what I always say about them talking about Daryl not understanding his feelings for her. It would be so much more tragic just to say, yeah, he was in love with her and he lost her. And they don't say that. They're weird about it, right? And to me, that just shows that they're setting something up for the future, that they're setting up an arc that she's going to come back and they're going to continue it. So, all right, I'm going to call it there for today, but I will be back tomorrow to answer more. Thank you so much for all your questions. I love them.